want to thank our panelists for joining us tonight, and I want to introduce our host, Mr. Doc Lucky and Sharina Campbell. I'll let you guys take it away from there.
Greetings, everyone. I am Shariana Campbell, a third-year business administration student from Savannah, Georgia.
Greetings. Good afternoon. I am Doc Lucky III. I'm a senior civil engineering student from Gainesville, Florida.
Thank you all for attending our event today. Today's event is just centered around why voter registration is so important, how you can register to vote, and our lovely panelists will detail some of those things.
So before we get started, we have a quick icebreaker for everybody. I put it in the group chat right now. What you'll do is you'll get on the select a hyperlink, and what it'll do is it'll take you to a voter knowledge game we have for you guys. And the winner of that game will get a $10 Starbucks card. So let's see who can win this. So let me know when you guys all are on the link. Let me share my screen first. Okay. Everybody on for the most part?
Just give us like a thumbs up if you can, or some type of reaction.
Yeah, I see Xavier. Thumbs up. Is everyone else good? I see other thumbs. Okay.
All right, let me get started.
Okay, the first question is, the group of people with the lowest voter turnout rate is? College graduates, young people, or senior citizens over 70. Yes, the correct answer is young people. I see 78% of people got it correct. Let's see who's on the leaderboard. First place, we have Deja. Doc is second place. And third place, we have Karaya, I believe. Good job, everyone.
Next question.
The next question is, which amendment gave African Americans the right to vote? The 13th, 14th, 15th, or 19th Amendment? Yes, it was the 15th Amendment. Deja's still number one. And Xavier, he's moving up. I see T. No, that's Todd. You're second place.
No, that's Tia.
That's Tia? Okay.
That's Tia. I'm not playing. I'm cheating.
Yeah. The third question is, what are midterm elections? The elections for Congress and some of the Senate, the elections for governors, elections in which members of Congress and some governors are being elected but not the president, and elections in which members of Congress and some governors are not being elected but the president is. I was trying to do it before it timed out.
Your time out. Yeah.
Yeah.
3 seconds. Whoever got that right.
The correct answer. Oh, it went too fast.
I went too
Deja's
fast.
still number one. I think mine's lagging. There it is. Yeah, so elections in which members of Congress and some governors are. It's fine. My screen keeps moving back and forth. It's fine. The next question is, provisions made for those unable to get their regular polling places on election day. Midterm election, absentee voting, ballot, or direct primary. The correct answer was absentee voting.
Although I will tell you that in 2016 in Florida law, the word absentee ballot was stricken from the statutes. We call them vote by mail ballots now.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Deja's still #1. She's gonna get that Starbucks gift card, watch. The next question is an election held within a party to pick that party's candidates for the general election. The answer choices are general election, midterm election, precinct, or direct primary. The correct answer is precinct. I don't think a lot of people knew this one.
Ooh,
Might have been wrong. Or it should have been general direct.
direct primary.
Should have been direct primary. Yeah,
Okay.
that's an error on me.
The next question is procedure for voter identification intended to prevent fraudulent voting. The answer choices are political efficacy, registration, purging, and absentee voting. Yes, everyone got that right. Okay, registration. Oh, okay, Deja. And Tia, she's coming up. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. That's the last of the question.
Well, congratulations, Deja. You won the $10 gift card to Starbucks. Thank you all so much for participating.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had stopped playing because I wanted everybody to win, because I would have crushed it.
Okay.
Now we're going to introduce our panelists, and we want first just want to thank you for your time, and then I'm going to introduce everybody, and then we're going to go ahead and ask them some of our pre-selected questions. So first up, we do have our current SGA president, Xavier McClinton. Xavier McClinton is a fourth-year economics student from Brunswick, Georgia, and current student body president and university trustee at Florida A&M University. Before taking office in May, he served as political action committee chair in the FAMU chapter of College Democrats and is a member of the Collegiate 100 of Florida A&M University and a proud member of Beta Nu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Next, we have Dr. Darius Young. He is an associate professor of history and the director of the Florida A&M University Quality Enhancement Plan. He is also the author of Robert R. Church Jr. and the African American Political Struggle, which received the C. Calvin Smith Book Award from the Southern Conference on African American Studies, Incorporated. Next, we have the state senator, Dwight M. Bullard. He hails from an esteemed educator, community activist, and legislator family. In 1981, Dwight moved to Miami, where he was raised in the community of Richmond Heights. After graduating from Miami Killian Senior High, give me 1 second. My roommates are being very disrespectful.
It's all y'all laughing right now.
It's just because I know.
He really
I think I know your roommate. You need me to give him a.
Bro, like I told you, man, like y'all know I got an event going on. So what do they do? Like, let's have a party. Like, come on, man. I do apologize for that. Back on it. Yeah. So when I won our state senator, Mr. Dwight M. Bullard, and yeah, so he continued his education at Florida A&M University, where he received his BS in history education. From 2000 to 2017, Senator Bullard was a teacher at Coral Reef Senior High School, and in 2008, he was sworn into office as representative of District 118 and was reelected subsequently. He served as a member of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Policy Committee, the Pre-K through 12 Appropriations Committee, Pre-K through 12 Education Policy Committee, and several others. At the time, then Representative Bullard was named Democratic ranking member of the Pre-K through 12 Education Policy Committee after his first term and became Democratic ranking member of the Education Committee subsequently. In 2012, Senator Bullard was elected to the Florida Senate, where he served as a vice chair of the Transportation and Agriculture committees and maintained membership on education and several other committees. In his time in the Senate, Bullard worked to stop online bullying, bring tuition equity to aspiring citizens, and raise the minimum wage. Bullard served in the Florida Senate until 2016. His extensive and remarkable role in political and educational leadership has granted him tremendous recognition. Bullard was a recipient of the Florida Education Association's Freshman Friend of Public Education Award and Friend of Education Award, and the Florida Association of School Administrators Next Generation Leader Award, and the Young Elected Officials Barbara Jordan Leadership Award. Senator Bullard is also affiliated with the Miami-Dade Democrats, where he has served as chair and was awarded the Miami-Dade Young Democrats Outstanding Leadership Award. He retains membership in the Democrats of South Dade Club, the Ron Brown Democratic Caucus, 100 Black Men of South Florida, as well as the J. L. King Prince Hall Masonic Lodge and the Richmond Perrine Alumni Chapter of the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Incorporated. In 2017, Bullard was hired as the political director of the New Florida Majority. In this capacity, he works to bring political education and awareness to underserved and often marginalized communities. He also works to push policy to positively impact those same communities. His work now, much like his previous roles, looks to uplift people in a way that makes them the masters of their own destiny. He continues to simply amplify the voice of those often unheard. Next, we have Mr. Ian B. Sancho. He served 28 years as the supervisor of elections for Leon County, Florida. He is recognized for his expertise in voter education and voting technologies. He's testified before both chambers of Congress and before other federal and state panels. An innovator, in 1994, Supervisor Sancho introduced early voting to Florida in 1994, as well as pioneering the first integrated Windows voter registration database in Florida. Mr. Sancho was appointed the technical advisor to the 2000 Florida recount by the Florida Supreme Court. Conducting independent tests in 2005, he uncovered a major security flaw in the Diebold AccuVote 2000 voting machine, capturing the 2000 Emmy-nominated documentary Hacking Democracy, leading to its decertification in several states. The Election Center awarded the Freedom Award to his office in 2008 for creating an intelligent barcode tracking system for vote-by-mail ballots. Retiring in 2016, Mr. Sancho is in the HBO 2020 documentary on voting machine security, Kill Chain, the cyber war on American elections. He served on the board for the nonpartisan Electronic Verification Network. And lastly, we have Ms. Amina Shakir. Amina Shakir is the director of the Candidate Empowerment Center, the CEC, and serves as a living learning community liaison in the College of Education at Florida A&M University. Additionally, she teaches African American history courses in FAMU's History and Political Science Department and health activism courses in the Women's Study program at FSU. Dr. Shakir's research curates the ways in which African American women's professional endeavors challenge race, sex, and class discrimination. To this end, she is revising a book manuscript entitled Birthing Liberation, Dr. Helen Dickens and Health Activism in Post-War America. She has presented at numerous academic conferences, served on national committees for granting agencies, facilitated administrator faculty trainings for the African American History Task Force, and is a recipient of several awards and honors, including the McKnight Fellowship, National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship, and served as C-SPAN lecturer in history. So once again, I want to thank our panelists for being here today. And now we're going to read off some of our questions that are pre-selected. Thank you.
Okay, hello again, everyone. My first question is for Mr. McClinton. The question is, how can students encourage other students to vote?
You got to talk about it. I think that one of the big things that I've seen is students who don't want to go vote. As soon as you have a conversation about the issues that affect them, all of a sudden their issues change. When you talk about the opportunity for student loan debt to be removed, when you talk about the opportunity for affordable health care in the future for recent college grads and people who make under certain income, and you talk about the potential for climate change and for those things to be addressed and a lot of their concerns. For students who don't want to go vote and who don't have that kind of drive already, you just have to break it down and explain how issues affect them directly, more so than people that they see on TV every day. That's what I've seen, and that's what's really worked. And I'm always a firm believer, if you can, peer pressure is the strongest tool. So you grab your friend, you grab their friend, and they grab a friend with them, and then y'all go together. Obviously, the pandemic's kind of messed that method up, but you talk to everybody and just have a conversation about what's going on.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, where do I go to vote for the school representatives?
You said that one more time. We went out for a second.
Where do I go to vote for the school representatives?
For the SGA elections and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so right now FAMU SGA has moved to a online system. So I think in the last election that we had just recently last week, I think everybody voted through iStrike. So everything that you have to do is just go through your phone and vote. There's no need for you to go to a polling precinct anymore, or at least not through this election. So it's just in your email.
Okay, thank you. And your last question. Why should I vote for my school representatives?
I would say it's because those are the people who represent you as a student. When you think about some of the issues that you want to see change, and some of the student life things that you want to see incorporated, those are the people who set that up for you. Like one of our biggest pieces, and obviously this year was kind of messed up, was kind of organizing and putting on homecoming. That's probably the biggest thing or biggest part of your fall semester as a student is being able to experience homecoming. That part of student life is the student experience, and you want to make sure that whoever you vote for knows how to put that on, has kind of an expertise or some type of experience doing that, and you can trust doing it. Outside of that, those are the people. I sit on the board of trustees, and so I'm the student voice on the university board of trustees. So anytime that there's a decision that's being made at the university level, it always has to go through the BOT. And you want a student who can not only articulate and can speak up about certain issues, and is not afraid to do those things, but you want somebody that understands student issues and isn't kind of above and kind of circulate themselves off. Because that's the person you want to be able to say, hey, you know what? He represents me. He represents my best interest. He really puts students ahead of himself and whatever his future endeavors or her future endeavors may be. So you have to vote for your student electeds because they're just important when it comes to your experience at FAMU, as community leaders are for your experience as a citizen of the U.S. or as Leon County or the state of Florida.
Okay, thank you so much for answering those questions. Okay, our next questions are for Dr. Young. Your first question is, how can students become more aware of the points of each politician?
Well, if we're referring to the presidential elections, you can go to each respective candidate's websites and look at their platforms. But you can also, I think, make some decisions by just being aware and paying attention to how certain candidates have behaved, presidents have behaved over the past 4 years, and make some very informed decisions as to who you may think will have your best interests at heart, right? You can study from the formal perspective, but you should also be very observant. Do your due diligence. Speak to professors, speak to your parents, speak to members of your community. Learn what's important to the people that are from your community, right? And the issues that are most pertinent to not only you as an individual, but people who are like you. And make some determinations based on that after evaluating the candidates and their platforms. That's the PG. That's the PG definition. Go ahead.
All right, yeah, I'll just I'll get the other questions for you.
Yeah.
So just give me 1 second.
But what I'll say is, again, for young people just to be politically aware that when you look at especially the history of the students at FAMU, that FAMU students have always been at the forefront of the various political movements. We have been a driving force, in fact, in many of the movements that FAMU represents, not only the brightest and the best in terms of the students and the faculty who are affiliated with the university, but it's the anchor of the Black community. And you all have a responsibility to continue that legacy. That's a burden that each of us inherit. You know, one of the things that I share in common with Dr. Shakir and Dr. and Rep. Bullard is that we all came out of the same department, right? And so we were very much entrenched in that history and that legacy. And we were often challenged as professors, as students, by our professors to do our work outside of the classroom, to be politically aware, and to not necessarily allow for politicians to tell us what they're going to do for us and for us to dictate to them what's important for us. Just to touch on some of the things that Mr. McClinton mentioned prior to, in terms of why young people in particular should vote, right? Should participate in politics. He lists many different reasons, right? But we could see some of the different debates that are happening right now, just in terms of judges, which affects each and every one of us. But even on a very individual level, when we look at FAMU, right? And the president has the right to choose who is over the Department of Education, right? That has a direct impact on us and how we're going to proceed as a university. So we don't have to look at it as if we're voting for an individual, right? And I think that's extremely important, especially for many of you, because I would assume this is the first election that you all are actually voting in, right? And understand how much power a president has and how that affects us on a micro level, right? In terms of your university, in terms of funding, in terms of financial aid, things that directly affect you as an individual student, you all have to look at the platforms and make decisions that best represent who you are, where you are, and what you stand for. So I'll pause there. Yep.
Thank you so much for that. I have your next question. Okay, the next question is, do out-of-state students complete absentee ballots, or do they register to vote here in Leon County?
Well, I mean, you have the option. Mr. Sancho probably could offer more in terms of the specifics, but you vote where you're registered, right? So if I went to FAMU, two-time graduate of FAMU, but I'm born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. If I'm registered in my county in Detroit, then I do the mail-in vote, right? But one of the things that we were kind of urged to do once we came here to Tallahassee was to register here in Tallahassee so that you can be assured that you're participating in the vote and that you can vote while you're here on campus, right? So you have either of those options, right? Main thing is to register to vote and to go out and vote.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to add, may I interject that, because your right to vote is personal to you. It's a constitutional right. And your constitutional rights travel personally with you. One of the reasons why we urge students not to vote by mail is that now you're limited to one way to vote. When I ran for office in 1988, I enrolled members of the Michigan Club to assist me in my campaign. And one of the things that I explained to them was, if you register to vote here, now all the methods to vote are available to you. Not only is the vote by mail method, but now you can early vote or vote on election day. And so you've now broadened your ability to access that right to vote. And the other thing is, your right to vote is not something that just floats in the air without any connections. If you, in fact, keep your status to vote, in the example in Detroit, do you have access to Detroit sources of news? Do you know who's running? What are the policies that they're saying? And again, the highest quality vote that you can give is a vote with the information that is pertinent to you. You have access to all of the news, and your right to be arrested, to be in peril by law enforcement, is where you are. You didn't leave that in Detroit. If you're going to be in interface with law enforcement, it's where you live. So that's why we recommended that your right to vote travel with you, and you always register to vote where you live. And that will provide the largest access to this right.
Like sure.
She good? I think she might have froze.
Yeah, I think she just froze. So I'll just go ahead and ask the next question for Dr. I believe we're still on Dr. Young. You only answered one question, correct? Or did you get the second one already?
You got the second one.
All right, awesome. Okay, so one thing that so a question that we have is, what happens if there is a tie in the Electoral College?
Well, I think technically it goes to the House, right, to cast ballots to decide it. But the likelihood of that is, it's very, very unlikely. The goal is to get to 270, right? The goal is to get to 270 electoral votes. I think the closest election that came to that, where you had that dispute, was probably the 68 election. But I can understand the spirit of that question with all the discussion about whether or not people will concede that night if they don't get the results in their favor. But the likelihood of us having a tie, I don't even know if it's math. I don't know for sure, but I don't know if it's even possible based on the way the Electoral College is set up. Yeah.
All right, and thank you for your for answering all of our questions, Dr. Young.
All right.
Now we're going to go to Mr. Dwight Bullard.
And I think I'm back. Sorry, guys. I'm in my dorm and the Wi-Fi is very shaky right now for some reason. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because my screen's not moving. I don't see anyone moving, but I hear you. So my question for you, Mr. Bullard, is why does everyone's vote matter?
Everyone's vote matters for a number of reasons, but I'll kind of concretely talk about two. One is you have to understand that and recognize that the exercise of the franchise or the exercise of your vote is an exercise in power. It's not a popularity contest. It's not something that should be kind of like skirted over. It's actually you as an individual being able to exercise your power and influence over the political process, and should always be viewed as such. The reason I say exercise in power is because as a former elected official, knowing that voting records are public records, the idea of someone coming into my office who feels as though not voting is some form of protest means that you've X'd yourselves out of the conversation. So you come to my office and say, well, FAMU needs X, Y, or Z. I'll simply, well, how many of you are voters? Well, none of us are. So technically, there's no way for you to hold me accountable for any of the questions you just asked. So everything you said is now moot. And I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I'm just saying that is how important your votes are and why everyone should participate. The second reason is because the reality is, for Black people especially, and I'm just gonna keep it 1,000, we don't have the luxury of sitting out of the electoral process. You know, a lot of folks will say, well, you know, my vote doesn't matter, my vote doesn't count. You know, there's a couple history folks on this Zoom right now. The reality is that there was a time and place where Black people did not have the right to vote. And what that means is that you did not participate by law. And don't want to remind anybody of a more troubling time, but when Black people were excluded from the franchise legally, that's because we were in bondage. And even after bondage, we were still excluded from the process strictly on the basis of our skin. And we understand that Black codes, Jim Crow laws, all the things that were passed ultimately to keep us either in bondage or bondage adjacent, right? And so we don't have the luxury as a people to stay quiet or stay out of the conversation around voting. And so whenever I run across people who say, well, I'm not going to get involved and I'm not going to do it, really what I'm looking at is, frankly, a sellout to the race, bottom line. So I hope that answers the two questions.
Well, that was fine. Thank you for that. Your next question is, how do I find my polling location?
Oh, you can find your polling location a number of different ways. So every county supervisor of elections does have a website at this point that is easily accessible. Oftentimes on the landing page, you'll find simple questions around find my polling place, checking my registration. I've had a chance to work with SOE Sancho, and he is literally one of the best. He's a gold standard for what a supervisor of elections office looks like. The reason I say gold standard is because during his tenure, even if you weren't registered in Leon County, he'd have no problem educating individuals on their respective polling places, even if they were in another state, and walking them through the process. So he and his office were amazing at doing that. What I would say for everyone on the Zoom is don't be afraid of technology. I mean, if you're able to, do a TikTok, run a Snapchat, put up an Instagram, you can easily navigate any process that can help you find your polling place. But I also encourage folks to lean on my organization. I put our information in the chat as well. The New Florida Majority is a statewide organization. We actually do have an office in Leon County. And many of the folks who run our voter registration operation are FAMU graduates as well. So these are folks that you should be familiar with, get to know. Don't be afraid to invite them out to events. Don't be afraid to invite them to these virtual spaces to kind of walk you through the process as well, if you're feeling intimidated by it.
Okay, thank you. And your last question is, what type of identification do I need to bring to the polls? And if I do not have any identification with me, can I still vote?
So you do need a state-issued ID in order to vote. And that goes back to some of the earlier questions around, where should you vote or how should you be voting? What ends up happening oftentimes is people will say, well, I believe I'm registered in Florida, and then show up with a New Jersey ID. And what that will ultimately result in is people not getting a chance to vote, even if they are registered in the state of Florida, because you haven't updated your state identification as of yet. So what I will be reminding folks is that you need to bring a state-issued ID with your picture, preferably with your address. Can you still vote if you do not have an ID, or if you do not have the proper ID? The answer is yes, but that will be provisionally. What they'll do is see your name in the system, but they can't necessarily qualify that you are the person, in fact, that is deserving of that, but they will offer you a provisional ballot to cast your vote. The concern that my organization is always going to have with provisional ballots is that more often than not, those provisional ballots end up being tossed out. Many are still calculated if folks, again, depending upon the SOE, are taking the time to make sure that you are the responsible voter. But too often you have to remember that each county has its own supervisor of election. And many of those are elected officials, and many of those are hyperpartisan in many cases. And so you have the real effects of voter suppression and voter disenfranchisement happening in many different ways. So I say this to say that Monday is the last day to register to vote in Florida in order to be eligible for the November 3rd election. So if you need to do any updating, if you need to check your registration, if you need to go down to the DMV to make sure that your registration and license match, now's the time to do so, so that when the election rolls around, you're not caught slipping.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bullard.
Thank you.
My next questions are for Mr. Sancho. And your first question is, what are the different ways to vote?
Well, Florida provides 3 ways for its citizens to vote. You can vote in person on election day. That's their traditional voting time. And about 1/3 of the voters in the state of Florida do that. You can vote during the in-person early voting period, which for the November 3rd election is a 2-week period beginning on October the 19th and running through Sunday, November the 1st. And the third way is to vote by mail, in which I've already done, even though the vote by mail ballots hadn't reached my house. They were mailed on the 25th. And what I did was I simply went to the Leon County Voter Registration main office, which is on Appalachia Parkway. And I asked for them to produce a vote by mail ballot for me on the spot, which they will do with a driver's license. I voted it in the office, and I used the vote by mail drop box that they have in the lobby. And after marking my ballot, I dropped it off, and I'm done. I've already voted for the November 3rd election. I don't have to wait and see whether the postal authorities are delaying the ballots or not. And I did that because I am, unfortunately, immunocompromised at this point in my life, and I really can't be exposed to crowds. So as I did in the first primary in August, I ordered a vote by mail ballot, filled it out, and just took it to an early voting station and dropped it off. And within 48 hours, it was confirmed on the website in Leon County that it had been voted and received. So those are the 3 ways to vote, and you can manipulate them the way I did by asking for a vote by mail ballot and drop it off in a vote by mail spot if I don't want to trust the mail, or actually go to the actual office itself and have the ballot printed out and vote right now. And I did that because I did not want to be exposed to crowds, and there are no lines right now in the Leon County Supervisor of Elections office.
So for individuals who are, voting by mail, do you necessarily think that it's safe, or do you think that they should go to like the voter registration office like you did?
Well, unfortunately, I've been in communication with individuals who've been working on the issue relative to what Mr. DeJoy has done to the postal systems. The postal system has been damaged by the elimination of some of these large voting machines that they use that can actually process 30,000 pieces of first-class mail. I'm sorry, but I would say that if you have a vote by mail ballot, don't mail it inside of 2 weeks to the elections office. 2/3 of all the vote by mail ballots that are not counted now in the state of Florida in the 2018 election, for example, were ballots that were received after election day. The postmark will not save you here. If the ballot arrives 1 day after the election, as it did in Volusia County, In Volusia County, there were 1,800 ballots that arrived the day after the election. All of them are voided and not even open and tabulated. So if you don't want to fall in the category of the largest category of voided vote by mail ballots, don't wait to the last second. The message for 2020 is however you vote, vote early. And the early voting period on October 19th is probably, I would not mail it after the physical in-person voting starts. Because if you do have a vote by mail ballot, I would simply tell you to take it to an early voting station, which we have 10 of, and just put it in the box. And it will be tabulated and received and properly given voting credit within 48 hours to the voter. So unfortunately, the vote by mail process has been damaged by the postal authorities at the very top. And despite federal judges telling them to put the machines back together, in some cases, they actually disassembled the machines and scrapped them. So they can't be put back in service. So again, even if you vote by mail, make sure you vote early. Don't wait till the last second. A ballot received after 7 o'clock in the Supervisor of Elections office will not be counted.
Okay. You kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask, for people who originally requested like mail-in ballots, can they change their mind and go vote in person? But I believe they can.
Yes, you're right. In that way, the vote by mail ballot acts like an insurance policy. You can get it, but you don't have to use it. You can change your mind, but here's the little trick. If you do change your mind and decide to vote early at an early voting site or on election day at your local precinct, please bring that ballot with you, because under the law, if you don't, they can make you vote provisionally, which is a more labor intensive, and your vote is not tabulated instantly, which is preferable to make sure that your vote counts 100%. So again, you can get that ballot and go vote in person at the other two options, bring the ballot, and then you can vote normally.
Okay, thank you. I think I see a question in the chat. So I believe, Mr. Sancho, you can answer this one. It says, is it too late for students to register to vote in Leon County?
No, and Dwight Bullard mentioned that properly. Monday at midnight is the last time a voter registration application can be received for the November 3rd general election. This year, of course, with the COVID virus being prevalent, there probably won't be a lot of in-person drives on Monday, which historically we've always done. But again, you can download, you can register to vote in the state of Florida online by simply, as has been mentioned earlier, going to the Leon County website, which is a very simple one, leonvotes.org. If you go to leonvotes.org/OVR, that stands for over the internet, you can actually register vote. Anybody listening to my voice right now while we're talking can simply register to vote online. If you have state ID, which had been mentioned earlier as well, because to do the online voter registration, they put in your Florida driver's license number, and that's one of the checks that they use for online voter education. If you do not have a ID with your picture on it, you can still register to vote, but you're going to have to do that in person at the Leon County Supervisor of Elections office, which I believe is 2299 or 2990 Suite 1, Appalachia Parkway. And you don't have to re-register if you're a student that registered in another Florida county. This was changed in 2006. We have a statewide database. So if you registered to vote in Tampa and you came up to FAMU to go to school, all you need to do is an address change. And you can do that. The simplest way to do that in Leon County is just pick up the phone and call 606-VOTE, 606-8683. And they'll, at that point, move your voting address from Tampa to Tallahassee, and you're done. And when you go to vote, all your records will be complete. So again, if you have registered in another county in the state of Florida, all you have to do is an address change, which you can do over the phone today, tomorrow, and you can actually do it while you're at early voting, although they'll require a different, one more piece of paper to fill out. And you can actually change your address at a voting location on November 3rd, if you're registered to vote already, but your address is in another county in the state of Florida. So we do not have some of the traps that some states unfortunately present. In some states, you have to re-register all over again if you move to one county to another. Florida used to be that way, but we changed it in 2006.
Thank you so much. My next set of questions are for Mrs. Shakir. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good. My first question is, do you have any advice for first-time voters?
So yes, some of the same things that Senator Bullard, Dr. Young, and also Mr. Sancho mentioned before in terms of knowing who is actually running in your particular area, following up with local information, all of which can be found online.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is, why is it important to vote in other elections like the special or general election, not just the presidential election?
So one reason particularly for most of you, because you are students here at Florida A&M University, there are a lot of local and state policies that affect you as students. And so staying aware of who is actually running in local and state elections really influences your experience here at Florida A&M University, right? So for instance, state appropriations, right? As you may know, we just recently got a new residence hall and a lot of other buildings on campus. That really helps to have people who are in those offices who represent your interests. When Senator Bullard was in state government, right, he was a viable advocate for a lot of issues that we have here at Florida A&M University. So making sure that you know what's going on local and state politics really affects you extremely intimately here at FAMU.
Thank you. Your next question, how does a voter know that their vote was cast?
Mr. Sancho mentioned that already, right? So within 48 hours, right, you will know on the website, right, if your vote has been counted. If you're going in person, which I'm sure many people are not due to precautions for COVID-19, right, you stick it in the little machine, like there's a little marker there that lets you know that it's been completed. You're giving your sticker, and that's how you know.
Okay. Thank you so much. The other questions I have here, I feel like they've already been answered.
We've addressed them. I was like, oh, okay, yes.
Well, we do have a few questions in the Q&A. I guess we can go ahead and start those. The first one is, and anyone can answer, or Ms. Shakir, if you would like, you can answer as well. What is the responsibility of HBCU leaders with the president-elected administration to advance the aims of the 21st century? I can reread the question if you all need me to as well.
Yeah, so I definitely think if we're thinking with FAMU being one of the oldest historically Black colleges and universities in the nation, in particular having a commitment to educating essentially what is the Black middle class, that we have to continue to think about the HBCU as a space to launch the next generation of leaders, of educators, of historians, of people in a variety of fields, right? So if we're thinking about this as a training ground to promote this next generation of leaders, you really have to use your power to vote to help to create that space, right? So if there are things that you want to see in terms of curriculum, in terms of programs, in terms of activities, you voting is really connected to helping to make FAMU that kind of physical, virtual space, however we end up being with COVID-19, that's really going to help to promote advocacy and activism, which is ultimately always the main goal of an HBCU.
Thank you. The next question in the Q&A is how can you verify that your registration was accepted? They stated that currently counties around our state are dealing with incomplete registrations.
Well, right now, if you went to the Leon County website, on the first page, there's, at the bottom, there are icons. One of those icons is check my information. You can actually go right now, anyone listening to this broadcast, and go to leonvotes.org and find out what we have on you. Is it correct? Do we have the right address? Do we have the right party? Although everyone will be receiving the same ballot in the general election, so the party is kind of irrelevant this year. They are always relevant in every kind of a primary, by the way, because Florida is a closed primary state. And I actually had to change my political affiliation from no party affiliation back in March in order to vote in the presidential preference primary. During my career as an election official, I had registered as no party affiliation, so I could not vote in any primary. But again, now that I'm no longer the election official, I can allow my partisan influences to come to the forefront.
Thank you. The next question in the Q&A is, how long after the election will the announcement of the winner take?
So I'll jump on this one because this is going to be a controversial one this year. With so many states having to kind of update their policy around vote by mail and absentee voting, you're likely not going to get an announcement as quickly as folks would like. So over the last few cycles, we've been accustomed to hearing, by midnight or by, 1 o'clock in the morning, an official announcement once the West Coast polls are closed. But in certain states, unlike Florida, that are now just adjusting to vote by mail, they have rules in place that will not allow them to start counting their ballots until 7 o'clock on the day of the election, which means that they would be counting, in some cases, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of ballots in order to verify the election in that state. So most folks are anticipating that it could take in upwards of a week after the election to definitively give an official vote count, if not longer, depending upon legal battles that may ensue, injunctions that may be filed, et cetera, et cetera. But you may get an unofficial announcement within 72 hours of the election. So be on the lookout for that. I also wanted to piggyback a little bit on the question around that Dr. Shakir offered an answer up to. And I just want to stress that knowledge is power. One of the things when I was in student government at FAM that we were able to uncover was an old federal law designating us as a land grant institution based on some 1881 legislation. What this basically means is that as long as FAMU continues to have an agricultural and mechanical program, if you will, it will continue in perpetuity. So a lot of the conversation around should FAMU be merged or should FAMU close that is always kind of permeated throughout can actually be undermined if students and student leaders and leaders of the university recognize that FAMU's designation through federal statute gives it levels of protection, unlike some other universities that are out there. So FAMU, North Carolina A&T, and a few other land-grant institutions that are protected by that give us some latitude. But a lot of people get a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and think that it's the snap of a finger that FAMU can be open or closed. But in reality, if we get the right attorneys, we can actually sue the state government if they were to try and pull some moves like that. So I say that knowledge is power.
Okay, I actually have a quick question. So I saw, recently that Trump announced that he has COVID-19. So if his, condition gets worse or something like that, and they continue to cancel, his involvement in the presidential debates, if there will be other ones and other things like that, will that push back the election, or will it still just go as planned?
The election will go as planned. There's an interesting question, and we can go down a rabbit hole a bunch of different ways. Some folks asked me earlier, like, what happens if, unfortunately, the president passes away because of COVID? So what's designated under the bylaws of both the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee is the ability to appoint individuals to be in receipt of the votes that are being cast. So even though Donald Trump's name appears on the ballot, the RNC has the conditions that allow them to replace a presidential nominee based under their bylaws, and the Democrats have the same authority in each state. So the election date will not be postponed. It will not be tampered with. One other condition that people have to worry about is under the 25th Amendment, the order of succession. So if something like that were to happen, yes, the vice president would step in, but it does not necessarily mean that the vice president would be appointed the nominee. He should, but it's not etched in stone. So all interesting sort of things to come about now that this announcement has come out as of yesterday. But that's the way the rules are set right now.
Okay, so how about students? Because I know the presidential debate got a lot of students talking. Even when I would go pick up my breakfast and lunch, I hear people talking about it. So how do students who watched that and that went very awful, or it kind of was a mess, if I'm gonna be honest, it was a mess. How do students how can they be confident who they're voting for now?
I always tell students when I have the conversation to, like I said earlier, take a look at the issues and where they stand on them. A lot of, and just to be vague and frank, a lot of students, and especially younger folks, don't like either one of the candidates, regardless of what side you're on. A lot of students have issues with, some people may say Joe Biden isn't progressive enough. Some people don't like Donald Trump's rhetoric or the way that he does things or kind of the way he operates. But I tell people to look at the issues that each of them kind of champion or that they say they're going to address or look at, and see which one of those most aligned to what you want to see out of a president, or how they want to address these things. You're never going to have a president that 100% matches everybody's political ideologies and thought processes of how to fix things in the nation. But you always want to vote for the person that's most like what you want to see happen. So I tell them to focus on the issues more so than the individual. And then that way you can get to the ultimate, you have a better shot at getting to the ultimate goal of what you want to see done.
That's exactly right. And I would add to that to understand that politics is both formal and informal, that you have a duty and a right to select a candidate that you feel best represents you, understanding that you're not necessarily voting for that person, but looking at the issues. But understanding that, especially when we look at the Black freedom struggle, the Black tradition, we have a role that we play outside of any political office to continue to push our issues into the national political discourse, right? That's what we see has been happening over the last couple of years with the Black Lives Matter movement, where presidential candidates have to even have a conversation about defunding the police and police reform and so on and so forth. Those conversations are driven by the people on the ground. And so understand you have a duty at the polls And you do have that duty to go out and vote, whether or not we're excited about either one of those candidates based on what our ancestors have went through in order for us to have that right and to have full citizenship in this country. But also understand that your role as a political participant does not begin and end by placing a ballot in a ballot box, that you have a right and a duty to be informed, to push issues, to hold individuals accountable, and to drive the narrative so that this country can become what you envision it to be, right? And so understand that we have both a formal duty, but also, probably more important, the informal politics that have been the narrative of the Black freedom struggle since our arrival to this country, right? So keep that in mind as well.
I also want to add real quick, don't want to take too long, but I think this was the first time, at least to my knowledge, that you see on both sides, both candidates and both major party candidates have a plan for Black America. From my experience of what I've been told, that I mean, I wasn't young enough, or I was too young to really pay too close attention to the previous election, but you didn't see a plan for Black America specifically being laid out and talked about and having events hosted and kind of a focus of the platform in previous years and previous elections. So the fact that that's there means that the work that students on the ground and young folks on the ground are doing is working, but now we have to go out and exercise and act on those actions.
Okay, thank you all. I'm trying to sift through the questions and see what we haven't answered yet. I see in the chat, someone asked, what would happen if Joe Biden as well had unforeseen incident? Would we still just elections would go as planned?
Yep.
I believe so, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's it for the questions. I believe you all have answered the remainder of them. The last part of the event, we are going to do a pledge to vote. And I believe Todd will drop that in the chat for everyone. There it is.
Yeah, so I dropped it in. So with the pledge to vote, students, you sign up, take the form, fill out the form saying that you're going to pledge to vote for this upcoming election. What we'll do is we're going to send you out a mask, so pretty much like a mask that you wear, for the coronavirus, saying that you voted a week before the election. That the week of the October 26th is when you should get it. Also, I will share a survey for you, for everyone to fill out, for the participants to fill out, to just talk about the event and kind of give some feedback on it. Let me drop the survey real quick.
I think it's another. Ms. Bowers, what do you mean by constitutional amendments on the ballot?
Oh, I got that one.
Okay.
So back in 2018, we had 11 constitutional amendments that were to be voted on. And what those are, in effect, are changes to our state constitution, or could be changes to our state constitution. So in the case of 2018, 10 out of the 11 passed, including a very important one, Amendment 4, that really was the largest voter rights expansion outside of the Voting Rights Act in our nation's history. So it's critically important for folks to pay attention. This year, there are going to be 6. Very interestingly worded, always amendments that are on the ballot, but they range from one around opening up primaries, or what we call jungle primaries. Another, well, if I can quickly run through them. So Amendment 1 deals with only citizens can vote, which is a, in my opinion, a dog whistle, because under our federal constitution, only citizens can vote. So the idea that we need to put in our state constitution is kind of crazy, but that is Amendment 1. Amendment 2 is something that a lot of folks should probably be paying attention to. That is the raise in the state minimum wage. to $15. So look into that one. Amendment 3 is the one I mentioned before around the change in the primary structure here in the state of Florida, which is interesting at best, to say the least. And I'll tell you the other remaining ones. I do apologize. Number 4 is it requires 2 votes to change the Constitution in our state, which would mean that if you pass a constitutional amendment by 60%, you'd have to do it again on the next election in that year. So that is a tricky one. Number 5 is limitation on homestead assessments, which deal with property taxes. And then number 6 is another property tax assessment piece, which would give a special carve out for widows of veterans of particular disorders. And so, again, I would definitely encourage folks to look into those and also look into any local referendum items that may be on as well. I may have some input.
And there is one local referendum. The Leon County Commission has put on a question as to whether or not a Children's Services Council should be established to essentially raise money to directly go to child services. And so that's a local one in addition to the 6. And these will all be on the flip side of your ballot. So the Leon County ballot consists of one legal size ballot with candidates on the front and back and questions on the back. It's 1 page long.
I see in the chat we have a question. It says, is there a website to go to and learn about the amendments?
I know the League of Women Voters does provide information like that on their website, as well as having Zoom conferences in the county relative to that. I don't know whether their Zoom conference on the constitutional amendment is over or not. I did receive a notice about it, but their website would have, in fact, a listing and a pros and cons relative to both of these, all of these 6 amendments.
Yeah, I would say League of Women Voters does a very thorough breakdown. But if you're looking for positions, the state conference of the NAACP is going to be issuing their position on all 6 of those amendments as well. So if you go to the Florida State Conference of the NAACP, you'll get a kind of yes or no based on what they want to say. I believe they're finalizing it, so look for that the middle of next week.
Thank you so much. Doc and I would like to thank all of our panelists today and thank everyone for attending the event. But thank you so much, SBA President Mr. McClinton. Thank you, Dr. Young. Thank you, Dr. Shakir. Thank you, Mr. Sancho, and thank you, Mr. Fuller. We appreciate you all's time today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure. Well,
Yeah, thank you guys for taking the time out for this event. I really appreciate everybody. I really appreciate the host and appreciate all the panelists for joining us tonight and all the participants for joining us. So thank you guys. And just make sure you guys fill out that survey and the forms in order to get the mask.
And everyone here, please register to vote by October 5th. And please vote. Thank you all.
all right. You have a good one.
Have a great day and have a great weekend.
Stay safe.
Thank you.